In this demo lesson, I will show you how to import your underwater scan to Blender, how to tweak the materials, set up a good looking lighting, set up a camera as well, and create a good looking, well, either a static 3D render or a simple animation. Let's get to it. So first thing you gotta do is to download the Blender, the free and open source tool that we're gonna be using in our lessons. Just go to blender.org and click download over here. As soon as you download it and launch it, you'll see the splash screen. Okay, and what you want to do is to launch the starter file provided with this lesson's assets. I got it right here, start.blend. This is what you're gonna see. Now, don't be overwhelmed with everything you see right here. I know it looks complex at the beginning, but I'm gonna make sure it's super simple for you. Now, for just a minute or two, we gotta go to Metashape or other photogrammetry software you're using. Load your project, display your model you're about to edit in Blender. Now, let's assume that you already have your model like optimized, the geometry corrected. Basically, everything is fine with this model. On a side note, Blender is gonna come in super handy when it comes to correcting the models. All the errors like holes or like double walls or whatever. There will be a separate lesson showing how to address all of those issues. It's gonna make your life so much simpler. But for now, let's assume that your model is good to go. I got a little shipwreck over here I did in Baltic Sea. I have the diffuse textures, I have the normal maps, which is also quite important. We're gonna be covering that afterwards. So the only thing I gotta do is click File, Export Model, and I will export it as FBX file. Also, you should make sure you're exporting the textures here. This checkbox over here. Export texture, JPEG, and there you go. Okay? Now that we have exported our file, we can pull it into Blender. So, again, open Blender, load starter file, start.blend, and there we go. Okay, several basics in terms of how to navigate here. The 3D navigation is quite similar to what you have in Metashape or Reality Capture. So you're just using your mouse, your middle button to rotate, and scroll to zoom in and zoom out. Okay. This window over here is for scripting. Now, don't worry, this is not gonna be a programming course. Actually, it's to simplify your life. Since I'm working with Blender a lot, I notice several patterns, several procedures that can be automated. Well, one of the examples that we will be covering in just a minute is how to convert all the materials, all the textures from the imported 3D scan from Metashape to materials that can be easily managed in Blender. So from time to time, you'll be receiving some scripts where I will be asking you just to paste in this window over here and run, and also I will explain you exactly what they do, when they should be used, etc., etc. Okay? And this window over here is our material editor. You are probably used to this meta shape or reality capture way of treating materials, where they are basically textures. You most likely know what the diffuse texture is, the color, what normal map is, all the bumps, etc. But in Blender, remember, this is a software for actual rendering. So when it comes to materials, you can do pretty much everything. And one more note, Blender's navigation relies heavily on the numeric keypad. And if, just like me, you're working on a laptop that doesn't have one built in, then you might want to get one of these. It's like an external keypad, works just fine, and it will make your life a whole lot easier. Let me show you how it works. So first things first, I will select this cube over here, move away with Shift, I don't see it anymore, and now if I press dot on num keypad, there we go, the camera centers on the object. Now using 4 and 6, in other words the arrows on the keypad, I can rotate around. Using 1, 3, 7 and 9, I can have my orthographic views. There you go. So very easy, very handy. I mean, you can do everything, all this using mouse, but I just prefer working with the keypad. Okay, I think it's time to import our model. Let's go to our lesson folder, and the model is loading right now. Okay, so here in this right panel, in the outliner, this is the list of everything we have on the scene. You see a model, but we don't see it over here. Okay, so again, the easiest way to center the camera around the model would be to click it over here, move the cursor to the 3D view, and press numpad period. There we go. Okay, definitely looks like our model. Another tip, just like in Metashape, in Blender you have several preview modes. So just press Z and a pop-up menu like this would appear. So we have options like solid, it's by default. We can display a wireframe, familiar enough, or material preview. This is going to take a while because right now it needs to load all of our textures into the memory. And since I like my models to be textured in details, I always use more than one texture, by the way. This model here, I think it has about 20 or 30, we're gonna check in just a second, textures, 4K each. Now, why don't I just create one huge texture? Well, remember, those are 20 textures, 4K each. If I was to achieve the same level of resolution using just one texture, it would be huge and Blender would be struggling to load it into the memory. Not to mention that if you would like to export this model and embed it on sketchfab.com, for instance, Sketchfab will not allow you to upload any textures higher than 4K. So that's the reason. Okay, so we have our model, and now it will be time to take a look how the materials are being treated in Blender. Okay. In this right panel over here, click this little icon at the very bottom with the material tooltip. And here you will see all the materials that are used in the model that you have selected right now. Okay, so those are all the materials, all the separate textures that Metashape exported for my model. Oh, 40 of them. Okay, I forgot there are 40 of them. Okay, and each of those materials is created as a so-called node setup. How does it work? Your basic node, which gives you the information about the materials, is called principled BSDF. This is a basic node which stores information like how metallic the material is, how does light refract on the surface, is it opaque or transparent, etc., etc. So some basic material features. It also allows you to connect any external information we would like to use. So, for instance, the base color node is exactly the place we would be connecting the information about the texture. Now, as you see, when I disconnected the base color node, the texture node, from our material, the parts where this texture has been applied on the model got white. Okay, this is because our texture node is disconnected. So let me just connect it once again. And there we go. Also, I'm gonna do the same thing with the normal map, which I also disconnected just a second ago. Okay. So just to give you an idea what can be achieved with nodes, we're gonna be having plenty of fun with nodes, but just for starters. Let's say I want my model to be matte rather than metallic. Well, right now I don't have any light on my scene, so perhaps you will not see the effect. But let's see how it changes the way the color is being treated. See, I reduced metallic all the way down, so the parts that are using this specific material, this specific texture, their color changed just a bit. And now, this is actually a major problem, because remember, we have 40 different textures on this model. And it wouldn't be a good idea to edit all of them, to apply all our changes to each and every material, all of those 40. So what we are going to do is we will create a node group that will facilitate everything we want to do with the materials and embed it into all of those 40 groups. Whenever we change one material, all 39 other materials will be affected as well. Okay, let's try. So let me make this window just a bit bigger so I see what I'm doing. And let's think what I want to do with this material. First of all, I don't want it to be metallic, that's for sure. I want the roughness to be up to 100%. The alpha is good. Okay. The normal map is, I think it's good. Perhaps later we might want to make it just a bit stronger, but we'll see. But for sure, what I want to do is to make the texture a bit more contrasted. So in order to do that, here comes the nodes. I need to press Shift A. Okay, and I will search for a node that is called brightness contrast. See, I got it right here, and I will just put it over this connection of those nodes. And now look what happens. If I increase the brightness, my texture gets brighter, quite obviously. Now, I want it to be a bit more contrasted, like this. Okay. Okay, that'll work. And now the question is, how do I apply everything I change here to all of the other materials? It's very simple, actually. I need to select everything that I want to be this repeatable instance, repeatable part of my materials. So that will be this node and this node. Shift click to add another one. I got those two selected. And right now I will press Ctrl G. What I did, I created a group. What is a group? Let me just go out using this button over here. You see, there were two nodes right here. Right now, I have only one. Now, groups are ways to replicate a node setup across different materials. So, what it means that this node group over here facilitates my BSDF node. Those you remember the basic information about the material, brightness, contrast, and then you have those group inputs and group outputs. So this means that in this material 0, my node group is connected to the specific texture, diffuse texture, like color texture, specific normal map, and it's being output to my material output, telling the Blender basically to display everything I set up over here on the 3D geometry. Okay, but we're still not there yet, because right now what I should do is to select this node group, Ctrl C, go to a new material, remove this, paste node group, connect this goes here, this goes here. Oops, sorry, actually the other way around. There you go. Yeah. And repeat this operation 38 times. Boring. I don't want to do it. So, this is where our scripts come in. In this starter file, this is exactly why I asked you to launch the starter file, not a new Blender file. In this starter file, you already have a node group that will come in very handy and give you some cool effects for our materials, the node group that you can use. And also, this script over here that does a very simple thing. It will cycle through all of the materials you have on your model and replace everything that should be replaced with a node group. So let me show you how it works. First of all, let's just revert all those changes. I gotta get back to the stage before I created this first group. Oops, no more Ctrl Z's. Okay, so let me just take this guy from here. There you go. Okay, and this is exactly how it was in the first place. So the only thing you gotta do right now is to move to this window over here, the scripting window, and press play and see what changes over here in this window. Okay? There you go. Boom. You see? I got my node group over here. The model got black. We will go there in just a second. But what's really cool is that the change got applied to all of my 40 models. I do prefer working that way, to be honest. Okay? And now the script is written in a way, in such a way that when you first run it, it just cycles through all of the materials and changes everything that we don't need with this specific node group. and then when you run it the second time, it will connect it to material output, to its own material output. So here we go again. There we go. It removes this material output, this old material output. Got there, and it has its own. Okay, now let's go here. Numpad period. There you go. Okay, now you might be surprised with what you're seeing right now, because, well, first of all, most of our model is missing, and the other one is it's basically just a wireframe. And this is exactly why I created this node group, because inside I embedded some of the effects that I would like to show you. A quick and easy way to create an eye-catching, cool animation is to make the model build itself. So right now I'm showing you an animation I did from the Maria Concordia project, where we were scanning a flooded mine here in Poland, and you will see that it's being built from the bottoms up. There is also this little lightning effect. So what I want to show you is how to apply the very same effect to a shipwreck. Okay, and this is also the reason I built this node setup. So let's see how it works. So just as a reminder, right now we are inside our node group. If you want to see the full material setup, you just click this up arrow over here. Okay, this is the actual material. And in all of them, we have the same group. From whichever material we go inside our group, here, using this icon, you will see exactly the same group. Okay? And I know it looks complex. Don't worry about that. For now, at the beginner level, let's just focus on you being able to use it, and then after that, we will go into understanding it. So should you decide to follow this course and finish all of the lessons, you will be building the node setups like this in no time, achieving any sorts of effects you want, right? So let's make this window a bit bigger. We don't need the script anymore. And at this point, the only two nodes in this group that will be interesting for us are those two. There we go. Those two values. Let me bring them here. Okay. Yeah. And those values are defining the cutoff. Cutoff of what? First of them defines at which part, at what place the model starts to be visible at all. Okay, if I pull it all the way here, I will see my model in full. Okay, and the other one defines at which point the model turns from a textured model to a wireframe model. Like this. Okay, so let's say for starters I would like to have just a texture model. So the first one should go all the way to the left, so we see the whole model, and the other one, responsible for the wireframe effect, should go all the way right. Okay, works. In a few minutes we will start animating this effect to achieve something similar to the underwater mine that I showed you just before. But before we do, there's still a few issues we need to deal with. First of all, we don't have a camera on our scene. So in other words, we are not able to render it out to create an image or an animation of what we have. So to create a camera, let's point our cursor here over the 3D view and press Shift A, which is responsible for adding stuff. And let's search for a camera. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay. Now, the camera, I see it in the outliner that the camera is somewhere. I have no idea where it is. So let me just switch to my wireframe or solid, perhaps. Yeah, solid. I'm clicking this one and I'm pressing numpad period so that, oh, sorry. Actually, I should press it here in the 3D view. Okay, so it's inside the cube. So we gotta move it. Moving objects in Blender is quite simple. You just need to either press G for grab. There you go. And it moves. Or you can use something called a gizmo. So, yeah, here are the gizmos. You see this little icon over here? Viewport gizmos, object gizmos. Since I'm using numpad and keyboard shortcuts for moving stuff, I'm not using those gizmos. However, if you don't have if you either don't have the numpad or you don't want to use keyboard shortcuts, you can just enable those gizmos over here. Okay, and you can operate with your mouse only. So let me just zoom out and move this camera here up. By the way, this model looks a bit large compared to the camera. And this is actually something you should always check when you're importing your underwater 3D scans because of the difference in how a camera is perceiving the distance underwater. I'm sure you're well aware of this effect. We know that in water everything looks bigger. Well, guess what? It also does for the camera. Let's click on our model, select item here on the right, and now let's expand the transform. And here we have dimensions. Ooh, okay, something went very, very, very bad because my model, which in reality is about 30 meters long, according to Blender is 851 meters long. Okay. I mean, technically you could ignore that. However, when it comes to rendering, setting up the lighting or setting up stuff like camera depth of field, the size does matter. So let's do it like this. Here, in this dimension, I will enter, let's say, 35 meters. Okay, and now you see that here in the scale box, it automatically calculated that it's 0.041. So I'm gonna copy this scale to X and Z, and there we go. Our model is accurately scaled. Okay, another tip. Let's get rid of other objects that we will be using perhaps in our next lesson. We don't need this cube over here. In the outliner you have a list of the objects, and next to them you see those little icons which are defining whether the object should be seen in the viewport preview, should be loaded into the memory at all, or if it should be viewed in our render. Let's turn all of them off. For this cube, we don't need it. And for this plane here, we don't need it as well. Okay, so right now we just have our model and we have our camera. Our camera is Yeah, somewhere here. Okay. Now that our model is accurately scaled, we see the camera is somewhere quite far. So let's use our numpad to see our orthographic view, I mean no perspective view. This is our model and this is our camera. Okay, so I'm gonna press G again to grab and move it somewhere closer. Okay, and then numpad C7 to get a top view. Okay, so now the camera is pointing at our model. Now we press numpad 0. Okay, and this is what our camera sees. In other words, this is the view that we will get when we hit render. We'll be getting there in just a few minutes. But before we do, I'd also like to show you the easiest way to navigate camera in Blender. Let's switch to solid view. Okay. Because just look, whenever I try rotating my view, my camera, sorry, my preview will jump out of the camera. I'm not previewing the camera frame anymore. Okay, so if I wanted to change where the camera is pointed, I would need to grab it like this without any preview, click numpad 0 and see whether I like the effect. No, this way we are not getting anywhere. So Blender has a very nice, very cool feature called the FPS mode. Yeah, you heard me correctly, FPS, like in games. So the only thing you need to do is to press Shift and tilde key. I think you have the preview on the screen of what I'm pressing. And when you do, you are operating the camera. So right now I'm just using my mouse and the camera is rotating. And in order to move, I just use WASD keys as if I was in an FPS game, and I can even move a bit faster using the Shift key. There you go. Normal pace, Shift. Normal, Shift. Okay. So this way I can create a frame that will be kind of promising. And with this wreck, I especially like the front. So let's try doing something like this. Okay. And now let's click Z and material preview. Okay, I kind of like it, but I'm not really sure about the perspective. As a rule of thumb, if we want an object to look bigger, we need to change our perspective. And I guess you might be familiar with something called field of view, or FOV, from Metashape, but in case you're not, let me just quickly show you. It's the effect is about the focal length, the virtual focal length of your camera. So let's click our camera. Here in this menu on the right, you will have this camera icon, and in the camera icon under camera settings, you will have a focal length. So see what happens when I change this. Right now you have like very zoomed in image, and instead of 50, let's just make it 35 will do. Okay, and now I need to just zoom in the camera. I mean, technically zoom in, just move it closer to the object. So Shift Tilt key. Okay. Yeah, I like this perspective a bit more. Okay. Okay, so we've got our camera, but we still don't have the light. And just like in the real-world photography, good or bad lighting can make a good or bad photo or render in our instance. So let's see what we can do. Going to Blender again, and first of all we need to add a lamp or light source. So again, Shift A to add, and let's look for light. There are a couple of lights. Again, we will be trying all of them out at some point, but for now I think let's go with the simple spotlight. Okay, I see it over here, so let me just bring it up a bit. Okay. Okay, well, nothing is happening. Well, nothing is happening because we are in material preview. The material preview ignores lights. Okay, so in order to see how the light behaves, we need to switch to render mode. Okay, we are in the render mode, but the light still does not affect our model in any way. So we need to go to the light settings here on the right and see how strong it is. Right now it has 10 watts. Well, no wonder it's not doing anything. So let's try 1000. Okay, there's something happening. But we might want to try 10,000. Okay, now it's a bit too strong, but that is only because it's a relatively small light and close to the object. And I would like to try a bit of backlight. Like in Hollywood movies, there is this very characteristic effect where the light is coming from the back of the subject, and this is exactly what we are going to be doing here. Let's switch to the top view and move our light, pressing G, to the other side, to the far side of the wreck. Our camera is somewhere here. Let me just check. Yeah, here. This is our camera, and this is going to be our light. So it will give us very nice shadows that will bring up the geometry. I need to rotate this light. Again, like G for grab, R for rotate is the key you want to use in this case. So like this, R, and I'm rotating it. Or you can also simply use the gizmo. There you go. Okay. And like this. Okay. Numpad 7 to get the top view. Okay, but it's not bad. It's not bad, but we have one problem. The spotlight is too narrow. This part is lit and this part is not. So we gotta make this spotlight a bit wider. Again, light settings. Here, this little green icon. And you can see we have a section called beam shape. Right now it's 45%, which is not enough for us. So let's try making it a bit wider and wider and wider. Okay. Let's see, maybe it will work. But now, as you see, the same light with 10,000 watts is going to light a substantially bigger area. So it's not that light anymore. So let's just go with 100. Okay, this is where things are starting to get interesting. Let's see how our camera view looks. Numpad 0. Okay, I kind of like it. Of course, feel free to play around with it as long as you wish. I don't know what kind of models you will be working with, so it's up to you to decide what kind of light will look right or wrong. So just have fun. We're not quite done yet, but I think at this point we can create our first render and save it on our drive. So the only thing we gotta do is to go to Blender and hit F12. Okay, and here is our render. Of course, render settings are a topic for another lesson, or 10 of them, but for now let's just stick with the default settings. They will do just fine for most of our cases. Okay, and as soon as we have our render, we can hit Image, Save As, and save it as our render 01. Congrats, you just did your first render. Okay, but what I don't really like here is that everything is in focus. So what we're gonna do, we will go to Camera, and there is a section down here called Depth of Field, which will help us bring out the our main hero of our visual story. Okay, so let's just hit it. Okay, nothing changes. So just like in physical real-world photography, the depth of field greatly relies on your aperture width. So, and this is our f-stop parameter. So let's bring it down a bit. Okay, you see? And focus distance is the field that will allow us to define which part is in focus. I can bring it all the way here. So right now, this part right in front of us is in focus. Or I can do it like this. So here, this section here is in focus. But you probably noticed that using this focus distance, well, probably is not the easiest way to do it. There is an easier way. Again, let's click Shift A and add an object that's called an empty object. I know it sounds weird, but empty objects, plain axis in this case, sometimes quite come in handy where we don't need an object itself on the scene. However, we need an information on an empty object's position, and this is exactly the case. Let me show you. Our empty is here. Okay, let's switch to the top view, numpad 7, and let's move it here. Our empty object is going to be defining where our field of focus is. Let's switch back to the camera view. Okay, let's bring this guy over the deck. Yeah, there we go. Now let's select our camera. And here in the depth of field section, you have this focus on object field. We just need to click this eyedrop and click and select the model on which the camera will always be focusing. In our case, it's gonna be this empty object, this one here. And now, see what happens. Whenever I move this guy, You see, the camera focus follows. Trust me, whenever you're gonna be doing animations, this is gonna be a lifesaver. So right now, let's say I would like to focus somewhere here. Okay. And also, to be quite honest, I think that this depth of field is a bit too much. I mean, I don't like the fact that this part over here is totally blurred. So I need to go to camera settings again and go to my aperture settings, and instead of 0.1, I'm gonna make it 0.3. Yeah. Oh, actually, let me just see, 0.2, 0.25. Yeah, that would work. This way, this part is fully in focus, and the background is, well, slightly blurred, but you can still see what's there. Let's hit render, F12 again. Okay, by the way, I see that this resolution is far from perfect, so actually we will have to go to render settings. So let me just show you. Oh, actually not the render settings, but the output settings. In output settings, you will define how big, how large the image format is gonna be, what's the resolution, what's the frame rate for the animation, what's the output format, etc., etc. For now, we just want to take a look at the resolution. And even though the resolution is full HD, I see that sometime before, for I don't know, whatever reason, I decided I want to do just 50%. So let's bring it all the way up to 100%. Right now, if I click F12 to render, I will get a full HD image. Yeah, much better. Now that we've got our camera, our light, it's time for some action. Let's go back to our material nodes, and as you remember, we were experimenting with those transitions between the actual material texture and the wireframe effect. So let's select our model, enter our node group, and navigate to our inputs. So, as you remember, our first one will define where the object is visible or not at all, and the second one will define where is the cutoff between the actual material and the wireframe. Also, remember, those values here are absolute. Those are world scale values. And as you may remember, in the meantime, I scaled down our model drastically. So whatever we entered here is going to be all over the place. So let's just try entering 0 here, so we know where we're at. Okay, there you go. But we do want to make sure that our whole object is visible, just to keep things simple for this first lesson. And then we got this. Okay. So I would like to make an animation where first the whole model is a wireframe, and then starting from the front it becomes a solid model. But I can instantly see a problem here. You see, the transition goes in wrong direction. Right now I'm unable to create a wireframe model where only the front is being solid. It works the other way around. And in order to achieve this, I created this other value input. This one, this guy over here. Right now it's -1. Let's change it to 1. And it flips. So this is exactly what we want. By the way, this input also allows you to define how smooth the transition should be. So if I do it like 0.001, it's gonna be very hard. You see? Yeah. And if I make it, let's say 10, it's very, very smooth. I think for now I'm just gonna stick with 1. Okay, that'll do. And we want to start our animation at the point where the model is completely a wireframe. Oh, sorry, not this field. Yeah, this one. There we go. Okay, let's see our camera, numpad 0. Okay, very science fiction-like. I mean, I kind of like the effect. So let's just try it out before we animate anything. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to achieve. In Blender, you can animate everything, starting from the object position, rotation, scale, material parameters, which is exactly what we're going to be doing, lights, camera, everything. So let's start with animating our material to make this smooth transition between the solid object and the wireframe. So right here on top, you have several workspace presets. What we want to do is to navigate here to animation, and as you see, our workspace changed a bit, but we still need to tweak it a bit for our needs. First of all, we have two 3D previews over here. One is a regular preview and the other one is our camera preview. For camera preview, we can change to material preview or render preview, whatever suits you. Here at the bottom we have our timeline on which we will be working, and here this window we don't actually need it. What we do, however, need is our node setup. So we want to change this to our node setup, our material settings. Okay, so click this little icon over here in the top left, and it allows you to select what kind of information you want to be accessing in this specific window. We are looking for shader editor. There we go. Okay, and here, this window, instead of dope sheet, let's just go to timeline. Okay. And now that we're ready, let's just find our material group, open it, and find our value that we will be animating. So this is the one. Yeah. Now, in order to animate it, we need to create a keyframe. In other words, Blender needs to know that in specific point in time, this value needs to be X, and in another point in time, same value needs to be Y. Okay, so in order to create a keyframe, let's move our timeline to our first frame. Yeah, frame 1. Let's hover over our cursor here over our value and press I. There you go. You see the value has changed its color. If it's yellow, it means that right here on this frame, on this specific frame we are on, there is a keyframe. Now let's go back to the timeline and let's move all the way to frame 240. Again, let's press I to create a keyframe. There we go. Remember, your mouse cursor needs to be over the field that you want to animate. Only after that you click I, you press I. Okay? And also we need to press this record icon. This record icon, when it's on, tells Blender that it's supposed to store any value I input on specific frame. So see what happens right now. I will change this. Okay. It's supposed to store our keyframe. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Let's move back to frame 240. Actually, there is an easier way, you know. Those controls here allow you to jump between the keyframes. This guy over here jumps to the previous keyframe, and this guy here will jump to the next keyframe. By the way, make sure your object is actually selected. I forgot about this one, sorry guys. Make sure your object is selected, because then the keyframes will actually be displayed here on the timeline. Okay? So now we need to make sure that by the end of our animation the whole object is solid. So let me just rotate my view and jump out of my camera view to regular preview. And on frame 240, let's go all the way back. Yep, there we go. Back to my camera view, numpad 0, and let's see how it plays. In order to play animation in Blender, you just need to press space. Now, the pace of the animation seems good, but actually it's a trap. Because notice here, when I play my animation, I got my frames per second, which in this case are 8, because this is a preview. So it's not running in real time. When you render out the animation, the frame rate is going to be probably 29 FPS, 29 frames per second. So you can tell that the animation is going to be too fast. So what it tells us is that we need to make our animation slower. And that's also a very easy thing, because keyframes can also be moved, just like ordinary objects. Take a look here. Just hover over your timeline and zoom out using your mouse scroll. There you go. And let's say those guys, those frames which stand for the end of our animation, should be let's say 700. That's 700th keyframe. Sorry, 700th frame actually. Okay. Now, if I play it again, the animation is going to be extremely slow, but then remember, this is not a real-time preview. It's just 8 frames per second. So most likely after we render the animation out, it's going to turn out just fine. Now, there is no point in animating the whole object if the camera is static and it just looks at the front of our shipwreck. So let's try to animate the camera as well. Let's select our camera and do exactly the same thing. Let's move our timeline here to frame 1. Okay, might be 0 as well. Let's press I. There you go. You see our camera has a keyframe. And now let's create another keyframe on frame 700. There you go. Press I. All channels. Okay. Now we got 2 keyframes for our camera. This orange bar between 2 keyframes indicates that there is no animation. Now, those keyframes are exactly the same. Now, this is the opposite of what we want. So, while we are on frame 700, let's just go ahead and move our camera. Also, please remember that this record button needs to be on, so that the Blender stores the information about the object, how it's being positioned in a specific point in time. Perhaps you remember how we move our camera, how we enter the FPS mode, Shift and Tilt key. There we go. And now I'm going to use my first person view and WASD keys to move the camera. So it somehow just follows our border between the solid object and the wireframe. Okay, let's say like this. And now let's see how it turns out. Okay. Well, not really, because the camera starts to move before we actually see the front of the shipwreck being turned into a solid object. So it's pretty simple. We can just take our first frame of the camera and move it, pressing the G key, G for grab. And let's move it to frame 50 or maybe even 100. So this way, the camera will stay static at the beginning and start moving only after we start seeing this transition. Okay. But again, you see our transition goes too fast. A bit too fast. So we're going to do exactly the same thing with the end of our camera movement. Let's just scroll out, zoom out just a bit. Grab those guys over here, which stand for the end of our animation, and move them to frame 800. And again, let's try to preview what's happening here. Now, again, the animation of the transition is going too fast. But hey, maybe that's not a bad thing. I mean, maybe our camera is right, but perhaps we need to tweak the animation of the material. So, let's select the object, find our, well, actually we don't have to find our group, we already have our keyframes. And I'm gonna take the last keyframes of our transition and move them right. Okay, the farther they go in time, the slower the transition will go. Okay. Now it starts to sort of make sense. Perhaps I even overdone it. Yeah. And now it goes nice and slowly, just like this. Yeah. And then we will end up having our fully solid model. Also, perhaps you noticed that some part of our timeline is lit while the other is dimmed. This is due to the setting that defines how long our animation is going to be. You can edit it very easily using those inputs over here, start and end. I would say our 840 frames animation is decent, so we can just leave it as it is. You might notice our image is out of focus. Perhaps you remember that our depth of field of our camera is being controlled by our empty object over here. So let me go all the way back. We see it over here. So what we just did is that camera moves, however the object controlling where it's being focused stays. So we should address it in a very simple way. Let's move like to frame 240, place a keyframe. Okay, and now let's move all the way here and make another keyframe. I'm pressing G right now and moving my empty node to be somewhere here. Yeah, that will work. I'm switching to my camera view again. Okay, and now it's in focus. Let me just check somewhere here in the middle. Yeah, that should work. We are almost ready to render out our first animation. There's just one more detail we might want to consider, and that is motion blur. Now, unlike the regular photography where we want the object to be sharp, in movies, videos, it works a bit different way. When you're filming an object and try to extract a single still frame from a movie, you will see that it's not, most of the cases, it's not sharp. You can see the object is moving, you can see the object is blurred. This is not an error. This is a feature, as they say in IT industry. Thanks to motion blur, the video will seem more smooth. And let me show you how to achieve that. Let's go to our render settings over here, this camera icon. And let's scroll down all the way here to motion blur. By default, it's gonna be disabled. So let's just render out a single frame right now and see how it looks. Take a look here, everything is crisp and sharp. And again, that's great if you're doing a single render, but not that great if you're doing an animation. So let's try enabling motion blur and pulling this guy all the way up and render it out once again. See the difference? And thanks to this motion blur, the animation will appear way more smooth. Okay, so now we're ready, almost ready. Let's go to output settings, and we need to inform the Blender where our animation should be stored. So scroll all the way down to output. There you go. I'm gonna paste my folder with the lesson assets. Let's name it animation 01 accept. Now let's make sure that the file format is FFmpeg video, because this is going to be a video, obviously. Now, just to double check, let's go to render settings. No, sorry, not render settings, output settings again. Our resolution is good. our percentage is good, so it's going to render out 100% of our full HD format. And now, important, instead of pressing F12, press Ctrl F12, which means it will render out the whole animation. And here at the top left, it's going to show you which frame we are on. I mean, it's going to show you if it wants to. We were just on frame number 3 in just a second. Okay, you see, right now we are on frame 13, and so on and so on. See you in a bit. After about an hour, our animation is ready. I'm kind of satisfied with how it turned out. Most likely I would be tempted to tweak it and play around with the settings for another couple of hours. And by the way, I'm strongly encouraging you to do so. I'm very curious what kind of great stuff you guys will come up with, and see you in the next lesson.